So today we're learning one more operation with square roots, which is division. We've learned how to simplify them, we've learned how to combine them, and how to multiply them. And today we're going to go ahead and learn how to divide them out. So I have 18 square root of 24 divided by 6 square root of 3. And I know it's division because that bar always represents that operation. It always represents division. And it's very similar to multiplication in the sense that we deal with what's outside of the radical separately from what's inside of the square roots. So first I'm going to go ahead and divide out what's outside of my square root. So I'm going to divide out that 18 and that 6. So I do the top divided by the bottom, meaning 18 divided by 6, which gives me 3. Be very careful. Sometimes people get confused and they might do 6 divided by 18. It's always whatever's in the top, your numerator, divided by the denominator, whatever's in the bottom. So 18 divided by 6 gives me 3. And now I'm going to go ahead and divide out what's inside of the square roots over here. So that's 24 divided by 3. So I get the square root of 24 divided by 3 gives me 8. So far I have 3 square root 8. But we're not just dividing them out, we also have to simplify our answers. And some of you guys keep asking, well, what do you mean by simplify? And I continue to tell you, it's just simply find the biggest perfect square from this table that fits into whatever's inside of your radical so that you can break it up as far as you can. So when I divided everything out, I'm just going to rewrite it. I got 3 square root of 8. So now, I got 3 square root of 8. So now I'm going to go ahead and see, can I break up what's inside of this square root? Maybe sometimes you might not find a perfect square that fits into it, but in this case, we're just going to check. I have 8, so I'm going to start with what's closest to 8. In this case, I'm going to start at 9 on my table. I'm going to start at 4, right? Because 9 is too big. I can't divide 8 by 9. So I'm going to go ahead and start with 4. And 4 does go into 8, so I'm going to use the perfect square of 4. So far I have 3. And I'm going to break up 8 into 4 times 2. Okay, we first write down whatever the perfect square is, which is any of these numbers inside of the radicals. And then we figure out, okay, 4 times what is going to give me 8, which is 2. So now I have 3 times the square root of 4 times 2. And I can break this up further. I have 3 times the square root of 4 times the square root of 2. Well, if I finish that off, I have 3 times the square root of 4. I know 4 is a perfect square, which is why we used it from this table here. And the table already tells me that the square root of 4 is equal to 2. So I have 3 times 2 times the square root of 2. And that gives me a final simplified answer of 6 square root 2. Okay, this answer here is simplified. Okay, this answer over here is not wrong, okay, but it's not simplified. This is what we get when we divide. But once you divide in your task, you want to go ahead and simplify like I did over here. And you want to break it up just into 2 parts, right? First you divide, and then you figure out, okay, what perfect square was the biggest perfect square that I can use to break up whatever is inside of this radical over here. So my final answer for example number 1 is 6 square root of 2. Okay, and again, just as a reminder, I do not want you guys to just plug in this into the calculator and give me a crazy decimal. What I want you to do is divide these things out and then simplify your answer. Now we have a little bit more of a complicated problem over here. I have parentheses, I have fractions, I have plus signs. Now, as you guys remember from our lessons before, anytime you see parentheses, you should know that you have to distribute. Okay, parentheses should signal to you, okay, I have to distribute before I can do anything else. So I have to take, in this problem, I have 8 square root of 2, then I have parentheses, square root of 6, plus 2 square root of 9 all over 4 square root of 3. Okay, now before I divide, because I know this lesson is about division, so I know there's got to be something here that I have to divide, and I see a big fraction, so I know something has to be divided out here. But before I can do anything with division or multiplication or anything, I know I have to first get rid of these parentheses so I can move things around. So I'm going to take this 8 square root of 2, the whole entire thing, okay, because the a and the square root of 2 are one term. They are together, so you have to distribute the whole thing. And I'm going to distribute it first to the radical 6, okay, and then after that I'm going to distribute that to the 2 square root of 9, the whole entire thing. So with that being said, distribution is always multiplication, so this is kind of like a mixed problem, mixing two different operations together. So I have 8 square root of 2 times 1, because remember if there's no number there, there's a 1, times 1 square root of 6, plus, I see some of you guys are forgetting this plus sign or a minus sign. If it's there, you always have to bring it with you. Plus, now I have 8 square root of 2 times 2 square root of 9. All I did was take what's outside of the parentheses here and multiply by each thing separately that's inside of the parentheses. And I still have this thing in the bottom of my fraction where it's 4 square root of 3. Okay, so now I have to continue to simplify. Okay, I still have to multiply these two things out, and then I can continue from my problem. Okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and continue on this side over here. So I have 8 times 1, which gives me 8. Then I have 2 times, and all I'm doing is multiplying this first part here. Then I have 2 times 6, which gives me the square root of 12. Then plus, I have 8 times 2, which gives me 16. And then I have 2 times 9, which gives me the square root of 18. Okay, all I did was take one part, okay, multiply what's outside of the parentheses, so that's 8 times 1 gave me 8, and multiply what's inside of the parentheses, 8 times 6, 2 times 6, which gave me 12. Then I took my other part, okay, and again I multiply what's outside of the parentheses, the 8 and the 2 to give me 16, and the 2 and the 9 to give me square root of 18. But yet again, I still have this 4 square root 3 here in the bottom. Okay, now I can't just divide all these things out at once. In order for me to simplify and divide out this fraction, what I have to do is actually, I have to break this up into two smaller fractions. So I'm going to break this up into 8 divided by, into 8 square root 12 divided by 4 square root 3 plus this other piece over here. 16 square root 18 divided by 4 square root 3. Okay, and now that I'm breaking it up into two smaller fractions, now I can do exactly what I did in example 1. Divide this out first and figure out what it gives me, plus figure out what this gives me separately. Okay, and then see if I can simplify anything else out. So your job today is before you begin your task, you actually have to finish this part of your mini lesson. Your job today is to take what I've started here in this example, in example number 2, and finish it off by figuring out what this gives you and this gives you, and see if you can combine and simplify anything out. Okay, one thing that I do want to say is, something that I don't want you guys to forget, is that sometimes you might get something inside of a square root that's already a perfect square. So for example, let's say I get a square root of 49. Okay, and you might think, oh, but 49 is already on the table. Then that means that that square root disappears, and you just get whatever the square root of that number is. Okay, so sometimes, just like I reminded you in multiplication, I'm reminding you now, sometimes your square root or your radical might disappear. Okay, so again, today for your task, you're going to divide things out and then simplify them. If it's not simplified, it's incomplete. And also, as part of your task grade and your mini lesson, you must finish up example 2 and tell me what answer you get after dividing these two things out.